Welcome. I'll get us started. My name is Corinne Waldow. I'm the Economic Development Director for the Boulder Chamber. I want to thank you for joining us this week for the personal and outdoor recreation section of our calls. Thank you for joining us each week to get your questions answered, to receive the information you need, and to provide us feedback. And in particular, I'll be putting out a poll later in the program for you to answer some questions about social distancing and face mask usage. This is very important that you answer these questions so that we have informed information as Boulder County moves forward in their mask order. In addition, you're going to hear some updates about some of the recent trends you've probably heard about in Boulder County around outbreaks and increased numbers. It's important for all of us to take our part in this and communicate the importance of safety protocols in order to mitigate the spread of this disease and to help us reach the next level in the progression of opening businesses. So at this time, I'm going to hand it off to Mary Olson with Boulder County Public Health.
Hi, everybody. Like Corinne said, we will just be going over some updates. We had the 7th amended public health order that came out last week. A lot of news about outbreaks in Boulder County. And the announcement from the state that there is potential to move into Protect Our Neighbors framework sometime later this summer. Some more information about our variance. That's just an ongoing process. And then, of course, we'll be taking your questions anytime as we proceed. So last week there was a lot of activity with some draft guidance for camps, indoor and outdoor large venues. That framework was announced for Protect Our Neighbors. That guidance was accepted on June 18th, and bars were allowed to open at 25% capacity. And then on Friday we had that 7th public health order that was adopted at the state level. And we will talk a little bit about the framework later in our presentation. So long-term outlook, we will most likely be in this safer at home category for quite some time. This is our new normal until we have a vaccine or treatment. And given what's going on in our community and also just across the country, this is something that we really need to embrace. And even though it's awkward and strange to have to wear a face covering all the time and maintain social distancing, all that stuff, this is something that we just need to incorporate into our lifestyles for the foreseeable future. A couple more reminders. The coronavirus is just as invisible and contagious as always. It is going to menace with us for quite some time. Compliance with our public health orders is mandatory. And again, given the upticks we're seeing, we just are going to continue to encourage you to follow all the protocols Corinne mentioned: hand washing, face coverings, socially distancing. That's what we have to do. If you have any legal questions about compliance, we do suggest that you contact an attorney. We cannot give legal advice. Face coverings. When you're out in Boulder County, you should have a face covering with you. We really encourage you to wear masks. We encourage you to have your employees and your patrons wear them. We do have guidance for that on our website. And we also have a link to our face covering script to help you when your employees encounter people that don't have a face covering with them. And then here's a whole host of other resources for you. Our website, the Boulder County Public Health website, is that first one. The state's website, Energize Colorado, which can give you resources for financial assistance and PPE and a whole host of other things. The chamber's here for you, the Small Business Development Center, and then any other of your professional associations, and of course your local municipality can be a resource for you. So linking you to the updated guidance, there were not a lot of changes in recreation in this 7th revised order, but Marnie will touch on the few minor changes that there were. We are going to be removing our sector checklist from our website. There's just so many changes at the state level. It's hard for us to keep our website up to speed with that. So we will just be linking you to the state guidance. Moving into some of the outbreaks we've seen in Boulder County, unfortunately this chart is moving up. So a lot of those outbreaks were centered around activity on the Hill, as many of you probably saw in the news, which led the city of Boulder to amend their public nuisance definition so they could increase their enforcement and make sure that our community is really being compliant with these public health orders. CU also weighed in, and they will be modifying their code of conduct to make sure their students are being compliant and keeping themselves safe and the larger community safe. A little more information on that. We're linking you to a Daily Camera article about that emergency order. And then workplace outbreaks, we talked about this last week as well. We do have 3 active outbreaks in workplaces in the county, 3 suspected clusters of virus activity. We have had 2 resolved outbreaks, which means about 28 days without any new cases being reported. And up to now, we have done 45 workplace assessments. 6 of those have been in the past couple of weeks. The state's Protect Our Neighbors framework that was announced last week. This is the potential new phase of the public health response. It is just in draft format right now, but it will come with several caveats. Communities will have to apply. They will have to meet certain thresholds and requirements, including testing capacity, hospital bed capacity, contact tracing, and seeing those virus counts go down. So right now, that's probably not something that we would be able to apply for. And again, this will be on a community by community basis. So we will keep you updated on how that progresses later in the summer. Our variance request is still in process. Again, given this uptick in cases, that's probably going to slow down a little bit. So that is not official. The variance process has not been confirmed yet, but we are still continuing to figure that out. So hang tight and we'll continue to update you on that. Okay, a little more information on some of the guidance, indoor and outdoor events. This may not pertain to recreation, but just, I won't spend a lot of time on it, just a little bit of information for you. Indoor venues, those large venues, will have a maximum capacity of 100 people. Depending on what their capacity limits are, it could be fewer. They do have to use the social distancing calculator. All venues have to use that to determine what their maximum limit is. Outdoors, maximum will be 175 people or fewer, depending on that capacity limit. And then several other restrictions for these events, making sure 6 feet of social distancing can occur at all times, making sure they can do contact tracing, wearing face coverings at all times, and then some other things about keeping performers away from patrons and many other requirements that I'm not going to go into here, but we will link you to all of this at the end of the presentation. We shared this with you last week from the state. Just a reminder that recreation does come with a lot of risks. Obviously, we all know that recreation comes with a lot of benefits too, but we really run that gamut here in terms of the spectrum of risk. Outdoor recreation is relatively safe, but when we move inside to gyms, we are increasing our exposure to risk of transmission. So just, again, this constant reminder of continuing to be vigilant to protect yourselves, your patrons, and the vitality of your business. Okay, with that, I'm going to hand it off to Marnie. And again, she's just going to give you the few updates that changed in the recreation sector.
Hello, everyone. Actually, we haven't seen a whole lot that's changed in the 7th amended public health order that came out last Thursday, I think it was. All of your indoor gyms, looking at the indoors, indoor facilities are open with 25% capacity. or up to 50 people, whichever is fewer. There is clarification that I think was added last week, which is that is per room. We have talked about that here in this webinar, and now we have that firm guidance from the state. Across the board, we're still, everything that we do is social distancing, which isn't just about 6 feet of different distance. It's face coverings when that can't be maintained. It's washing hands. It's the all of the public health protocols that make sense. Sharing of equipment is discouraged. There's some equipment that you do need to share, so clean and disinfect that between uses, between users, between individuals using that. Showers and restrooms can be open, and lockers can too, but really the desire is to promote social distancing. So if you can close off some of those lockers to ensure that you've got more distance between people, because we forget sometimes, or offer those social cues or physical cues, that would help. What you see here about indoor rec centers and gyms with up to 50 people, last week, one of the things that we talked about is in response to inquiries and questions, we clarified that in Boulder County, we are allowing up to 50 people in an outdoor fitness class as well. That's not outdoor, that's not 50 people hanging out in a gathering. It is specific to outdoor fitness and a class. It's also, there are some other practices, or I should say other guidance for other activities. I'm going to go into those now. So let us know if you have questions about the type of activity. In general, again, this is pretty much the same. Overall, outdoor activities are still restricted to 10 or fewer people, but they are authorized. There's some numbers that are a little different. Playgrounds and outdoor sports facilities can have no more than 25 people. So on a playground, you may have 25 individual people that have no interest in connecting with one another, versus a pickleball or basketball court. You may have a team of people that is using a court or a field, and they can have up to 25 people per court or field. We need to ensure that high-touch surfaces are cleaned and disinfected frequently, and that goes for your outdoor swimming pools as well. In fact, for outdoor swimming pools, the guidance is to clean those surfaces every hour. You can go up to 50% capacity for your outdoor swimming pools, but you still have a cap limit of 50 people. Go ahead. Outdoor youth and adult recreational sport leagues, another area that allows up to groups of 25 players. And that would be excluding your coaches, referees, and umps that might be out there as well. I'd encourage you that if you're part of one of these sport league teams or a league, that you should look at the guidance, because there is some specific requirements around maintaining your contact information, your team rosters, and more information about, really making sure not only social distancing, but limiting your coaches out on the field. You're gonna, they want you to hold games. Of course, without fail, I've got somebody at the door. I'm gonna mute myself for just 1 second. Okay, you didn't have to hear that yell, I apologize. So let's see. Information around teams. The idea around trying to hold games with teams every 2 weeks is the illness can present itself anywhere from 2 to 14 days. If you can limit the exposure between groups of people, that's the preference, if possible. To that end, don't share your snacks or water or equipment. For youth sports, where you're going to have parents and families, you can have spectators, but the guidance strongly discourages that for adult sports. You can, yeah. Okay, one of the, I'm not sure how many guided or non-guided services we have here in Boulder, but I wanted to be sure that the text that is highlighted in red here was some of the change that you saw in for sports teams now applies here as well. So non-guided and most guided services allow groups up to 10, and that number does not include the staff. There's a whole host of guided or non-guided recreational activities that you can be doing for that. They've called out a few activities that kind of make sense, that if you're in a boat on a river, rafting, or in a Jeep, that they have different guidelines for that. 2 households in a boat or Jeep in groups of no more than 10 people, not including staff. I don't know if I said the word households, that's what I meant to say. The other piece of this is non-guided equipment rentals have to follow retail guidelines. So if you do any rentals, please take a look at that. And same as last week, large-scale facilities need local approval. In our county, that would include our ski resort. And then there are a number of entertainment activities, such as, you know, climbing or climbing walls, zip lines, and the like. There was some new stuff that was highlighted in the outdoor recreation for operators. So I wanted to take a moment and bring that to your attention. Maintain 6 feet from patrons and your fellow employees, because you don't live in the same household likely. So we need to make sure that it's not just the retail or the outfit versus the patrons. Everybody should be maintaining that distance. No more than 10 people inside a facility, up to a max of 50% capacity, and that would be whichever is fewer. So if you have a small room, you're not going to get 10 people in there. Some of our outdoor recreation operators may have an area that is dedicated to sales or food service. So in those cases, you would follow the retail or restaurant guidelines as applicable. And it's important to note that if you are transporting any of your patrons, it cannot be in a closed air vehicle for transport or for your tours. I think there you just have to make sure your windows are open. There's a lot on this, so be sure to check out the full guidance, which is in Appendix K of the 7th Public Health Order. And there is a link to that coming up in another slide. And it's this slide, actually. So the top one there is the 7th Amended Public Health Order. It is still, the order is safer at home and in the vast great outdoors. It was published late on the 18th, I think. We all probably started paying attention to it on the 19th. In addition to that, the state has provided guidance. Each one of these links here is a different document or a different web page that speaks to and kind of interprets what is in that 7th Amended Public Health Order, because of course that health order covers many, many sectors. It's lengthy. So if you're just focused on personal recreation, you can check out that link. But if you could see what's happening in other sectors, I'd recommend it. That's the last link on the page. The full guidance is several pages, but it's very user-friendly, and it is an interpretation of the public health order by sector, which provides you with what the requirements are. So if you have any questions beyond what we talk about here today, please reach out to Boulder County. Here's our, the best way to reach us is by email or calling the call center that takes a log of any inquiries or complaints. And I think that might be it.
Oh, yep, sorry.
It's okay, it's an interesting view. So at this point, I'm going to launch the poll for the people on the call, and then we have some questions coming in, but this gives you an opportunity to answer the questions. All right, so I've launched the poll. The polls are specifically around face coverings. your opinion about the safer at home Boulder County Public Health face covering requirements and social distancing. So we appreciate your feedback on that. So the question is, can you hold events with out-of-state teams following the 100 people and social distancing?
So the guidance specifically says that games that require extensive travel are strongly discouraged. Again, we are not lawyers that can interpret that for you. You can choose to do that on your own. Out of state would likely be some extensive travel. So just recognize that. Let's see, I'm taking a quick look here to see if there's anything else that might speak to that.
And even in the events guidance, we had this conversation earlier. If the person's not in the same family, they have to maintain 6 feet distance. So you'd have to be very, very cautious of, youth or adults who want to mix and talk, but have to do it from 6 feet away and wear masks and so forth. So that's also that overlap of a couple guidances. Also, there's specific language about tournaments too, correct?
Well, actually, that's a good point. So the one of the amendments is, so let's see, we're on the 7th amended public order of safer at home and in the great vast outdoors. In the 6th amendment, which was in place until last Thursday or Friday, there were restrictions, and a number of those restrictions have been deleted. The word tournament or having sport tournaments has been deleted. However, I'd like to actually read this directly because it does still state that most of the stuff that came out of this area still included 2 items. And I'm sorry, it's going to take me a moment to look that up. And tournaments the word tournaments has been deleted, and I'm not going to say you could have tournaments. That is up for your interpretation. If there's no other questions, just give me a moment and I'll try to find the place in the order since I didn't call these out.
Speaking of interpretation and lawyers and so forth, one of the recommendations you all do every week, which is if you need interpretation, contact a lawyer. And one of the things we've heard is that a lot of businesses don't have just a lawyer to contact, or they can't afford to. So I will be sending out a link to a state of Colorado small business legal group that has volunteer lawyers who are helping small businesses with a lot of the legal questions that are happening. So I will send that link in today's email. It is something where if you are a lawyer and you can volunteer, that'd be great. Otherwise, this might be able to provide some of that legal resource that I know that we've mentioned in all 75 hours of webinars over the past 6 weeks. So that will be a piece that we will offer to you. Let me look at.
Corinne, I did find on the 7th public health order amendment, on page 7 is, I think it's section 1, but the alphabet is J. And what it reads is, due to ongoing concerns regarding disease transmission in larger group settings that could result in disease outbreaks, the following activities are not authorized to occur. First is gatherings or events of more than 10 people that are not otherwise authorized by this order. And second is sporting events, except for recreational sports leagues as authorized in the previous section, which is section 1H2C, which I have shared with you.
Thank you for that clarification. And we got a comment, you've all done a great job. Thank you. Thank you all for your hard work. So, that's nice to hear. And we appreciate, I have to say, on all these hours, I've met 20 people with Boulder County Public Health who have really dedicated time and energy to answering questions, providing guidance, and in some cases, leading the state. Our social distancing calculator is now being used by the state. some of the resources and some of the questions you've asked them and the clarifications have been very important for our businesses. And so I want to thank you also for doing that. Do we have any other questions in either the Q&A or in the chat? And if not, I'm going to hand this off to Jesse, because you know what question I'm going to ask. And that's around, maybe you've done this on every other call, talk a little bit about some of the things that we can do as businesses to help, with the mitigation of the spread of the disease, help with the communication of the requirements, and help our community be able to move to that next phase, which would be the protect our neighbors. So
Sure.
appreciate any guidance there.
Yeah, and I guess to start at the broadest level, I think businesses have an opportunity that not a lot of other sources of information do, and that is you see a wide cross-section of the residents of Boulder County, and you employ a wide cross-section of the residents of Boulder County. And so you have an opportunity to model behavior that can really help our community, whether that be encouraging face mask wearing or social distancing, or just even putting up the signs that the Boulder Chamber produced that really describe why and how to comply with the orders. I think it's really important in this conversation with the people in these fields to note that young people, there are rules that allow children to not have to wear masks in some situations, but young people are, they are sometimes hard to convince that they need to wear a mask. And I think your industries are a great place to point out that wearing a mask for everyone means that coaches can be around, that people can come watch a sporting event or be outside with you. These are the sorts of things that if we all as a community take the small steps, we can try to combat these outbreaks and also just the natural spread of the disease. And I think one thing that I've been trying to hit on is that scolding doesn't really work. I tried that already. It doesn't seem to get through to people. And so it's really about modeling behavior. It's about showing that if we follow the rules, then we get to do more stuff. And so I think every business has the opportunity to communicate that. And it's not something that you have to even do consciously going and talking to people, just making sure that everyone's wearing masks inside your businesses, or around your sporting events, at your recreation centers, making sure staff are wearing their mask properly. Last session, we had a long conversation about not just the importance of wearing a mask, but making sure that you're wearing it properly. A lot of our complaints are, everybody was wearing a mask in the rec center, but they all had it down so their nose was exposed, or it was around their chin. Your neck is not the part that's releasing the virus into the environment. It's covering your mouth and nose that really makes the difference. And so in your recreation centers, at your sporting events, on your recreational teams, making sure people are wearing masks in a friendly environment is really the way to reinforce that behavior all the time.
Thank you. I know Mary said in the beginning, but hearing it from Jesse as well is a good way to kind of put that out there. I don't see any additional questions, which, surprising with this group, I think, because we're kind of settling down with the rules and they're taking shape and you're getting clarifications.
And because
again,
Mary and Marnie are crushing it with getting the right information.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. I know there were a lot of questions, especially on the first week, and those 10s and 25s and 50s and all of those numbers for you guys to be able to really drill down, get the state to become a little bit more accurate and look at those guidelines was very helpful. So as a reminder, I'll send out an email with all the links referenced, including a direct link to the public health order, because as Jesse has said on previous calls, sometimes the websites aren't as updated as the public health orders, and that's the actual requirement in law. So we'll send you a link to that. I'll send you a link to the legal resources. Some new resources that we found this week, maybe in respect to PPE, a recording of this webinar, and then direct ties to all the state sites for the requirements, since you will be pulling back your own checklist. We thank Boulder County for doing that before you were really paving the way as the state was trying to figure things out. You created some of these guidances for businesses, but now the state is doing a much better job of communicating those requirements. Thank you for everybody who answered the face covering poll, and we hope to see you next week. There will be changes in coming weeks, especially as these orders change, as we move to new phases statewide, and the county has to do its own role in advancing to those stages. So please stay up to date on the information and ask your questions. Have a wonderful night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.